What do you get from giving? There's a member of our community that I've heard speak about that subject quite passionately in her life. And I've witnessed her living it in her own life. And so I asked her to reflect with you, if she could this morning, about how she answers that question. What does that mean to her? What do you get from giving? It's Sister Linda, who doesn't look a day over 10.
Today we celebrate Stewardship Sunday. We're at the end of the liturgical year. In 2 weeks, we are going to be celebrating a new year at the beginning of Advent. We're a little ahead of the other folks who wait till January. The readings continue to be about the end times when Jesus will return in glory. According to the gospel, we are to live as though that were today. What if it were today? The gospel mentions signs. Nations will rise against nations. There will be earthquakes, plagues, famines, signs in the sky. Do we not see some of those very signs in our world today? Wars, earthquakes, hunger, hurricanes, volcanoes. What if this were the day that you would meet Jesus face to face? And Jesus asked you this one question. Linda, how did you use the gifts I gave you to bring about the kingdom of justice and love? How did you use the gifts I gave you? Now that question gives us a reason to pause. These are personal gifts, gifts like faith, intelligence, leadership, gifts like singing, art, sense of humor, or perhaps you're the best cook in the family or an excellent teacher. So I invite you to close your eyes for just a few moments to name 3 gifts that God has given you. 3 gifts that God has given you. The gift I am most grateful for is life itself. Let me tell you a story. When I was in my late 30s, I suffered from clinical depression. And thanks to a very loving community and excellent counseling, I received the help I needed. And I went to live with a healing community of sisters in St. Paul, Minnesota. And there I learned very healthy behaviors and how to face courageously those demons within me. It was while living with those wise women and mentors that my life did a 180-degree turn. A 180-degree turn. You know that line from the song, I was lost but now I'm found? That took on a whole new meaning for me. And when I returned to full-time ministry, I have to tell you, I had a heart that was full of gratitude and joy for the gifts I had received, and a deep desire to share those skills, those gifts with other people. Because that's how it works. When we receive a gift, what's our first response? We say thank you. Or the old-fashioned way, we actually send a thank you note, which I really like. And then out of that sense of gratitude comes this desire to share what we got. with other people. We want them to be as happy as we are. We want them to have that same experience. And so we share our gifts, and in that sharing, we experience joy. Which brings me to the gospel question. What do you get from giving? 3 small letters. J-O-Y. Joy. The gospel tells us not to wait. Well, why would you? Why would you put off your joy? If Jesus were to ask you today, how did you use the gifts I gave you? What would you say? Well, when I had more money, I got a job and I was out of school, then I was going to give. Or, you know, God, I had to pay off my college loan, or my car loan, or my kids' tuition, or I had to build up my retirement. Or what if Jesus said, well, how did you give your time and your gifts, your talent? Well, I had to study really hard to get into the best med school. That took all my time. I was waiting till my thesis was done. Well, God, I was just so busy with work. Or, you know, I'm kind of shy, and I knew somebody else could do it much better than me. We all can rationalize that this is not the time in our lives to give of our treasures, of our gifts. And you heard in the second reading today, St. Paul scolded those Thessalonians. If you don't work, then you don't eat. Put it that simple. Now, that was, in my mind, sort of a perfect community. You know, they threw all their goods in with each other and they were sharing everything. Still wasn't perfect, though. There were still folks who were kind of critical of others and not really working. Frequently, I'm asked, how can I grow spiritually, Sister Linda? How can I deepen my faith? And this is what I suggest you do. Invest yourself. It's the best investment you will ever make. It produces 100-fold. What investment broker can promise that? Now, you might want to start small. One of our former interns told me that the first thing she did at the CSC in her freshman year was to volunteer to be a greeter usher. And I can remember her freshman year. She was rather shy, but welcoming folks to Mass at 9 o'clock. And that led to being a CSU officer, leader in the student group. And that led to Awakening Talk, and then finally to an intern in service. You can start small. How does stewardship, the investment of yourself, your gifts, help you grow spiritually? Well, generosity is what frees us from attachment to things. It frees us from possessiveness and clinging to things. And the less we're filled with self, with possessions, the more space there is for God. It's like, picture this container. You know, you got this container. And if you have a lot of stuff in it, there's no room for God. So generosity helps us to empty that out. And when we are filled with God, that leads to an awakened heart. And that is a heart filled with joy. Now, there are many ways you can share your gifts at the CSC. I'm going to put a plug in for those liturgical ministers because we do need greeter ushers. And we do need Eucharistic ministers and choir members and hospitality and sacristans and electors. One of the couples who used to serve very faithfully as greeter ushers are now in Bolivia. So we definitely need to replace them. But don't worry, not every greeter usher winds up going to South America to serve them. I have experienced generous giving in this community. This is actually my 11th year with RCIA, And in all that time, we have always had generous sponsors for each candidate and a rather gifted large team of like 15 members who are willing to give their time and their talent. And this always fills my heart with joy. And I know the list of our donors is long, and our volunteers are many. But this is Stewardship Sunday, where each of us steps back and looks at ourselves. How am I doing? Imagine if we had 100% participation at the CSC. We wouldn't have to look for volunteers on Sunday. The interns would not be the only ones cleaning up after soup. The CSU officers would have way more volunteers than they could use. Gary wouldn't have to worry about money to pay bills. Not that he worries. And you know, we would be spreading the good news through our service to the poor here in St. Louis, all over the country, and probably all over the world. And there would be so much joy. Look how they love one another. This is the kingdom that Jesus inaugurated when he was on earth, and he depends on us to bring it to its fullness. What do you get from giving? The best return of all: joy. Don't let the opportunity pass you by. Within the next couple of days, those of you who are registered will receive a letter from us and a chance to commit yourself this year. And if you're not on the mailing list or if you're not registered, we have forms outside, or maybe the Spirit just moves you today to pick one of those forms up. As we begin a new liturgical year, make a New Year's resolution. Invest your treasure. You are the treasure. The formula for good stewardship is simple. Thanks, Brianna. Here it is. Recognizing that all we have is gift equals gratitude, which leads to generosity, which leads to joy. May I be the first to wish you a joy-filled and happy New Year.